What's up, everybody? This is the 2024 Lexus TX 500h F Sport. So about the 2024 TX, well, I already reviewed the TX 350 just a few weeks ago and was very impressed with the new TX here. It's an all new giant three-row crossover here for Lexus, something they badly needed for a long time. And I came away really impressed with that 350. But now with the 500h version, you get more power and yet more efficiency with better fuel economy than even the regular 350 version, while also getting better handling and the much sportier looks. And so as far as the styling here for the F Sport version for the 500s here, you're going to have the more aggressive front bumper there. It's a little bit lower and just looks a little meaner and amps up the already angry scowl of the TX here and just gives it an extra little dose of aggression. You also get the darker accents. You get dark chrome accents along the window line here. You have these black 22-inch wheels. You have the F Sport badging, of course. Out back you have a rear diffuser there that's painted a little bit more. It looks a little sportier as well, and along with, you know, the badging and all that. And I think overall it does a nice job of amping up the aggressiveness here without going overboard. And I think that it's still a really cool look here for these new TXs. The interior of the 500h also does get some F Sport unique touches here on the inside, but mostly it's still going to be the same as a regular TX here. So the main things, you get these sportier F Sport seats, and you can see the main difference here is they're going to have some Alcantara or ultra suede inserts here on the bolstering, but you still have perforated leather here in the middle and on the back, and still feels really nice. And these seats, I believe, are slightly firmer and slightly more close with the bolstering compared to a regular TX seats, just from my memory from a few weeks ago in the regular TX 350. But they feel really nice and sporty. Unfortunately, there's no adjustable bolstering or any kind of fancier stuff. Some of the competitors offer massaging seats, for example, at this price point, and you don't get that here in the TX. That's the only little nitpick I will say, but still really great seats that are heated and ventilated. You also get this unique F Sport steering wheel, which I believe is a little thicker than a regular TX steering wheel. Feels great in your hands. I don't love the plastic paddle shifters at this price point. I'd like to see some metal paddle shifters instead. But aside from that minor gripe, a great wheel. And then the rest of the interior, is mostly the same. You have some ultra suede again up here on the dashboard, but otherwise the interior is going to be all the same as a regular 350. And if you'd like to hear more about the interior of the TX, my wife and I just did a full in-depth interior review on the TX 350 just a few weeks ago. I'll link that in the description below, as well as at the end of this video if you want to hear all the details on this interior. The only other difference here for this 500h version is this one is equipped with the captain's chairs. The one we had a few weeks ago just had the bench seats, and so with the captain's chairs here, you get ventilation back there as well as heating and that little center console in the middle. And but overall, the bottom line here with the TXs is that all of them are super spacious. You have more legroom in the third row there than anything else with a unibody three-row crossover like this. It is just so much space, lots of comfort, great tech here with the digital gauges and this huge 14-inch touchscreen, and overall just a really nice interior. But let's start up and go for a drive. The TX here just has the usual Lexus key, and still a totally fine key, but it is a little dated. But anyway, it's keyless access, of course, keyless entry, push button starts. You just leave the foot on the brake, hit the power button, and it turns right on. And since this is a hybrid, oftentimes you won't have the gas engine kick on immediately, but whenever you put it into the sport mode, it does automatically kick on that gas engine as well. All right, so setting off here in the TX 500h F Sport. So the first thing you'll probably notice about this vehicle, well, the first thing I'm noticing, the TXs have a little bit of a heavier steering weight compared to the Grand Highlander that it shares a platform and some of the mechanicals with here as well. But I just love the steering, and I think it's even a little bit heavier here for the F Sport version. There is also, with the sport mode, you can tighten up the steering even more with the sport steering feel. But other things to note here, you'll also notice the brakes. So the brakes here in these Hybrid Max vehicles, it's the Direct 4 system is what Lexus calls it. Same thing, where you have the 2.4 liter turbo motor and a couple electric motors along with it. The regen braking is really well done, but every once in a while it feels a little wooden, and you'll feel, especially here in the Hybrid Max stuff, it's a little grabby every once in a while, and it's totally fine most of the time, and it's very mild with the grabbiness. It's not as intense as like some other performance vehicles might be, but just occasionally you have to focus a little more on being smooth with your braking. A very minor thing you'll learn to get used to very easily. Just one little thing you might notice right off the bat. Other things you'll notice is just the quietness and the refinement here of the TX. So that is one thing. They went to great lengths to make it quieter, more well insulated, and smoother here compared to the Grand Highlander that, again, it shares a platform with. And so You'll notice that it's really quiet even on this park road. We're going pretty low speeds here, but it's actually a really windy day, and I haven't heard any of it here so far. We will see, but I mean, it's just so luxurious. It definitely feels every bit worth that Lexus price tag here with just how refined it is. Another thing that you also might notice, especially if you're maneuvering at low speeds, is that this vehicle has rear wheel steering. It's only on the 500h here, and it's supposed to give you sportier handling as well. We'll test that out here in a minute, but it also should help with your turning radius. Now, whenever you're stopped, it doesn't look like it really moves the rear wheels that much, and so I'm not sure if it does more whenever you're moving or what, but what I did notice though is just even yesterday I had to do a U-turn, and I was shocked. For a vehicle that's as long as this is, I did a U-turn. I was like, oh wow, that took way less space than I thought it would. And I was able to like zip right into a parking spot after doing like a U-turn. Basically, it was really impressive to me just how this vehicle is so maneuverable. And rear wheel steer is one of my favorite features. If a car has it, get it, because it's just like so nice to have. It helps you with parking. It just gives you better handling, better stability. It's just better in all the ways, in my opinion. And so I love this has rear wheel steering, and that is something, by the way, you do not get in the Grand Highlander at any price point in that, and that is one exclusive feature here to the Lexus, alongside the adaptive dampers, which this has as well on the 500h version. And the adaptive dampers, they just have a normal and a sport mode, so there isn't like a super soft comfort mode, unfortunately. So you just have the two modes to pick from there. But speaking of drive modes, we'll talk more about the ride in a minute, but we're going to hop up into the sport drive mode. It kicks on the gas engine when you do that and gives you the sportier tack. But let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. And here we go. All right. Took it a split second, and then just really, man, it takes off nicely. And I love this Direct 4 powertrain, the Hybrid Max powertrain, same thing. They feel so good. I love the way it feels in these vehicles. I was really impressed with the Grand Highlander as well, and I've also was impressed with the RX 500h as well that I reviewed a couple of years ago. But in here, I mean, it is punchy. So what you get here is 366 horsepower and 406 pound-feet of torque, which is 4 more horsepower and 6 more pound-feet of torque than what you get with the Grand Highlander's Hybrid Max version, and it'll give you a 5.7 seconds 0 to 60 as a result. So it's the 2.4 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine combined with 2 electric motors. The back end is electric only, so that is how you get all-wheel drive, is through that e-motor in the rear. And it's a hybrid system, but it's always keeping that rear motor going no matter what, whenever you need that. And so it's basically going to be a little less of a hybrid than a traditional hybrid, where it can do a little more electric driving. With this, you're going to deplete that battery pretty quickly. It's like, I think, a 1.5 kilowatt hour battery or something. There's really no electric range or anything, and it's just the engine has to work a little harder to keep that battery going, since it's always got to feed into that rear motor there and give you that Direct 4 all-wheel drive capability. Man, it is so punchy. The thing that I love about this powertrain is that it is always ready to go. And it, by the way, runs through a 6-speed automatic transmission, which might sound crazy in the year 2024, especially in a Lexus. To have a 6-speed sounds very outdated, but it doesn't even matter, because it still is always in the right gear. And with that electric motor, it fills in any kind of waiting period or any kind of gap that you might expect to experience. There is none of that here, because it's just instant electric zip. And what I love is, even whenever you're just rolling into the gas from a stop sign or something like that, it is just this mountain, this wave of torque that just pushes you, and it always just feels so punchy, and I absolutely love it. But coming up some corners here that I always take, let's see how this 5,119 pound SUV handles. All right, it actually handles itself pretty good. So there's a little bit of lean here, but honestly, it feels really good. So we got 255 wide tires all around, and I think the tire setup might be a little bit of why this might not be quite as sporty of a handler as maybe some of the other competitors are, which might have some wider tires. But you have, again, that rear wheel steer system, adaptive dampers here in their sport setting, and I mean, it handles itself flawlessly. I mean, really, for a, again, over 5,000 pound vehicle, it really disguises its weight very well, to the point that I have more confidence, I think, going into corners in this than I should, to be totally honest. It's just so good. I mean, the Grand Highlander already, even without those enhancements, was still a very good handler as well, for, again, what it was. But this, this is actually about 183 pounds heavier than a Grand Highlander, and it's just impressive that even compared to like the TX 350, this is almost 450 pounds heavier than that 350 version just because of, you know, the e-motor in the rear there, all the hybrid stuff, you know, and the removable steer adds weight, I'm sure, and the adaptive dampers and all that. So that all adds up to, you know, 450 pounds basically of extra weight, which is a lot. And you know, I feel like it feels a little bit heavier, but it doesn't feel 450 pounds heavier to me than what you're getting with the regular 350 version. And so overall, I'm just pretty impressed with the way this thing handles. Another acceleration. Yeah, so you roll into the gas there, and it is so punchy. Now, it's interesting, though, because since the power from the front wheels is coming exclusively from the gas engine, you have the rear motor being the only propulsion in the rear there, I have sensed a little bit of torque steer coming through the front wheels. And there's actually a time yesterday when the roads were a little bit wet where I gave it a little bit of gas. I always save my first full throttle thing for the video here, but I gave it a little bit of gas yesterday, and even just without full throttle, I actually got the traction control light to kick on there just for a split second. So, you know, it's not going to be quite as good at putting the power down compared to, you know, a true all-wheel drive system, for example, in the Acura MDX Type S, which is kind of competing against, you know, that has a real torque vectoring all-wheel drive system. And with that, you know, you're going to have a better power delivery, especially whenever the roads are a little bit wet. With this, you know, it still feels front-wheel drive based for sure, and that's just the restrictions of, you know, just having so much power in the front and still having a decent amount of power in the back. I mean, it still does a good job of powering out of corners. We'll demonstrate that here now. I mean, it's very neutral, and yeah, I mean, it feels really good, but yeah, that dynamic rear steer, I can feel, I mean, it's not as apparent as I think it is in some other vehicles with removable steer, to be totally honest, but it still feels very good. And like I said, for something that's as huge as this is, I can't remember, I mean, I gotta say, this is probably the most fun I've had in a three-row crossover in a long time, if not ever. I mean, you know, outside of like a Durango Hellcat, or maybe, you know, the MDX Type S, but even, you know, since we are talking about that, and it is one of the primary competitors, very similarly priced, and similar power levels and stuff, you know, I do have to say that I think this actually feels slightly flatter. The MDX Type S, you know, was good, but it felt a little more boaty, it was a little more leany, and just felt a little more bloated, to be totally honest, compared to this. But anyway, I mean, it doesn't even matter, because honestly, no one's going to be pushing these things like a sports car. But just know that if you're getting the F-Sport version in hopes of it actually feeling sportier, you're going to be satisfied, I think. It really does feel very sporty for something like this. So other things here, though, we will go ahead and pop it back into the normal mode. I also love how this infotainment system has the drive modes right here on the screen. There's a little quick access thing, and you go straight into them. Very easy to switch in and out of the modes. But you know, whenever you are just driving on normal roads, now this road is pretty newly paved and in pretty good shape, but what I've noticed so far in the past day or so, that my first day of driving here, is that the ride is still really nice and smooth. Now, if I'm splitting hairs, it might be a tiny bit stiffer than the 350 version, but to me, it's not going to be upsetting. You're not going to be like, wow, this thing is really too stiff or anything. Like, it doesn't feel like it's really compromised at all. As far as the ride, to be completely honest, I've seen some other reviews saying, oh, it's too stiff and, you know, bumpy and stuff. At least in my experience so far, that's not my takeaway. To me, this is a nice, smooth ride, still very appropriate for a TX. And if you want the hybrid component here, you want the better efficiency, you want the extra power, the higher status, whatever the case might be, just know that I don't think that you're going to be compromising your ride quality very much, if at all, here with the TX 500. So certainly, you know, don't be put off by, you know, the fact that it has a sportier suspension setup. It still is totally smooth, totally appropriate for a three-row luxury crossover, in my opinion. And yeah, I just really like the way this thing drives. We're out on the highway here now, and I will demonstrate the adaptive cruise control system, which this does have as standard, by the way. The adaptive cruise here, it has lane trace assist as well, so that helps you to, you know, stay within your lanes here. So we're going to have all that stuff turned on here. And the one thing, though, that I don't still love is that if you get the head-up display, which you don't have to get as part of the technology package, but if you do get that, then all of your controls for turning on cruise control are only shown and done here on the head-up display. Now, you still have a little display here. The gauge cluster showing you that as well. But to actually use these steering wheel control buttons, you know, you have to use all that through the head-up display. I would suggest getting rid of the head-up display and not getting the technology package if you don't want the stuff in the technology package. You know, anyway, Out here on the highway though, with that system turned on, it does a really good job. This has the Lexus Safety Suite 3.0 Plus system, which has, again, in addition to the adaptive cruise, the lane trace assist, it has automatic emergency braking. It has their proactive drive assist, which will even preemptively slow you down and help with steering whenever you're not on the highway if you'd like. And then this car also has the optional package, which gives you automated parking and also the traffic jam assist function. And that function is why you have this sensor here on the steering column. And what that's going to do is allow you to do hands-free driving. It speeds up to just 25 miles per hour. Up to 25, it'll allow you to take your hands off the wheel. If you're on designated highways and it sees that you're paying attention, still looking forward at the road, then it will allow you to do that hands-off driving there at those low speeds. Again, just for when you're in, grueling traffic at those slow speeds, and it's doing that inching up for you. It's really great to have it also handle the steering in those, circumstances as well. Now, it would be nice for it to do more advanced steering assist, but, outside of the Lincoln Aviator, which I believe might start to offer Lincoln's hand-free system, aside from that, there's really no one else that does, really automated hands-free stuff just yet. Otherwise, though, up at highway speeds now, you hear the wind noise a little bit more. This car also has these crossbars on the roof for some reason, so that's going to hurt my impressions of road noise here at higher speeds, especially because that's just going to add extra wind, and unless you want those crossbars on, that's something you're not going to experience. But I mean, we're going around this gentle corner here now though, and it's doing the steering assist for me really well. I just kind of have my hands on the wheel here. You still have to keep your hands on the wheel, but it was doing all the steering really for me there, and did confident assistance, and is one of the better systems I'd say these days as far as lane keep assist systems go. It's pretty confident with keeping track of the road lines, giving me good steering assistance, steering well, and being reliable. And so overall, just really nice out here on the highway, and it's just great that you have all this great safety tech here, much of it standard. The only other little safety thing I want to mention though about the TX here is that many of its competitors do get an IAHS Top Safety Pick Plus award for their safety systems. Now the TX, since it shares a platform with the Grand Highlander, shares a rating with the Grand Highlander, and when the IAHS just did their crash test on the Grand Highlander, unfortunately for the small overlap crash test, it did get an acceptable rating instead of a good rating. And as a result of that, that got it ineligible to be on the Top Safety Pick Plus award list, or even a Top Safety Pick Plus at all. Just one thing to note there, I mean, it's still going to be a very safe vehicle, and it still gets an acceptable rating. It's not like it's a bad rating or anything. There are some that do worse ratings in this segment. So, but just one thing I want to mention, if you are someone who's very safety minded, just note that this won't get the highest scores like some of its competitors will, but hopefully, that's something that maybe Lexus will even fix in later model years here potentially. But as far as 2024s go, just one thing you got to be aware of if you are very safety minded. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts here so far on the TX 500H. But thanks to Lexus, I will have this vehicle for an entire week, so I'm going to drive around all over the place, and I'll come back and give you guys my final real world fuel economy, as well as my thoughts on the pricing and how it compares to the competition, and anything else that I noticed during my week of driving. Alright, so I've been driving the TX 500H for a week now, and overall, I still really like the TX, especially here with the 500H version. Love having that extra power, love having the slightly shorter turning radius here with the rear wheel steer, and the ride has been totally fine. One other thing though that is a disappointment here is the fuel economy in the 500H. So, obviously it's a hybrid, and you're hoping for some better fuel economy than the non-hybrid version. But the thing is, with this direct force system for the electric rear axle there, it's always powering the back end. So again, that battery is always being drained and always having to be replenished by the gas engine. And I mean, it still does all the usual hybrid stuff where it'll kick off the engine whenever you're coasting, and for around town kind of stuff. So that's certainly nice, but it still is just not going to be as efficient as some of the regular hybrids you see from Toyota and Lexus. But they are having the plug-in hybrid version with the TX 550H Plus that's coming, and I think that's going to be the one to get if you want to have the actual good fuel economy, also having the electric range of that one. This one is still marketed as a performance thing, and for good reason. I think it's about having that extra power and not so much the extra fuel economy, because I've gotten 20.1 mpg here. These are rated at 27 mpg in the city, 28 on the highway, and 27 combined. So, I mean, usually, you know, it is wintertime, it's very cold. I've been doing some longer warm-ups and things like that, but still, I haven't been sitting with the car idling for hours on end or anything. You know, very little idling, honestly, and I'm, you know, still 7 to 8 mpg under where I was hoping to be. I mean, typically I'll do like 1 to 2 mpg less than the city rating, and even on, you know, a vehicle in the middle of winter. And so I was hoping to maybe see 25. And I remember even in the Toyota Grand Highlander Hybrid Max, I believe I was getting closer to 23 in that, if I remember correctly. You know, and so this is even lower than that. Obviously, again, this has more power, more weight. You know, not that much more power, but as far as the weight goes, and you know, just the way it's set up, I'm sure there's some of that that's compromised a little bit, but shouldn't be that much lower. So regardless, you know, I just would say, especially if you live in a snowy area and you drive like I do, which I mean, I wasn't beating on this thing. I was using it as a family hauler. You know, I'm not driving it like a sports car, but still, just keep in mind, you may not hit high 20s for these with the fuel economy in real world driving. Again, that'll come down to your area and a million other variables. Your mileage will vary, as they famously say. Now, I think that is maybe 1 mpg better than a regular TX 350 when I had that for a few weeks ago. So, you know, there's an improvement there, and having the improvement plus the extra power is, you know, an awesome win-win. Usually there previously had to be a compromise. If you want more power or better efficiency, and you couldn't have both. With this, you do get both, just not as much extra efficiency as, you know, as advertised, at least in my experience, and, you know, not as much efficiency as I was hoping for. And the last thing to mention is pricing and how this compares to the competition. So, as far as pricing goes, the TX 500H here starts just over $69,000. This one, as tested, is just under $79,000, and that's because this one is the luxury trim, which gives you the real leather seats. It also gives you a heated steering wheel and a few of the other, you know, upgrades. And so, you know, I think it's a really nice trim to get for sure, especially having a heated wheel and all that is very nice. But I do have to say that I don't think the TX 500 is as good of a value as the TX 350. With those, you know, you can get one of those for like 63 grand. Now, that was a mid-grade trim I had for that one. You know, even if it's a luxury trim, though, similar equipment, you know, you're going to be right around 65 or so. Basically, the price premium comes out to about $10,000 to $11,000 extra for the 500 over the 350. And, you know, as far as removable steer, I mean, that is certainly nice, and the slightly smaller turning radius is certainly appreciated. If you got the disposable cash, you know, obviously this is the better version. It's the higher trim level and, you know, higher performing version. So that's great. And like I said, if you have the extra cash, go for it. But if you're looking for the best value in the TX lineup, I don't think this is it. You know, the adaptive dampers, while they're nice to have, we're talking about a giant 3-row crossover that weighs over 5,000 pounds. So, you know, it's not going to be super sporty. It's also just, you know, not a ton that you get. I mean, yes, you get that extra performance and that slight bit of extra efficiency, but as far as the interior goes, it's pretty much the same, you know, aside from different seat coverings. But, you know, there's not a huge difference that justifies a 10 grand spread, in my opinion. Yes, the engine is a nice upgrade, and yes, the hybrid thing is a nice thing to have, and those things are expensive, and so I understand, you know, why it's, you know, so much of a jump up. But it's just a little tough to justify at this price point, particularly whenever you look at some of the other competitors. So if you're not interested in the hybrid thing, you know, for about $75,000, you can get an Acura MDX Type S. Now, it's a little bit smaller. You're not going to have quite as spacious of a third row. That goes for any of the competition that I'm talking about here. So if you want the most space, TX wins by default. And so if you want a sporty TX, you know, this is the only game in town as far as that goes. But, you know, it's just worth noting that the MDX is lighter because it doesn't have a hybrid system. And they even have like massaging seats in that for that 75 grand price point. I will say, though, that, you know, there is no rearwheel steer in the MDX, and I actually think that this is a little flatter with its handling than the MDX, like I mentioned in my backroad segment. So, you know, MDX might not be the best from a performance standpoint, but it's similar as far as power goes, and, you know, just the fact that it undercuts just a little bit and gives you massaging seats, and, you know, a few other things. There's quilting for the seats, which is a little more upmarket feeling than what this has, and there's more ambient lighting in that, you know, a few other things. So, you know, that's just, I think, one of the strongest competitors, honestly. There's also the Lincoln Aviator, which does give you a twin-turbo 6-cylinder engine, and obviously doesn't give you the hybrid thing there, but does give you, again, that extra punch there, and those are very similarly priced as well. And another one that, you know, is pretty nice and large, and, you know, is just, I think, a worthy competitor as well, again, if you're not interested in the hybrid thing. And the German competitors are all going to be more expensive. The closest one is the Audi Q7. Those fully loaded are around $82,000, so not much more of a premium over this, but the Q7 is smaller, it's lesser performing, and, you know, doesn't have a hybrid thing either. And also the Q7 is a bit dated at this point. So, but that's the only one that gets close. All the other ones start in the low 80s with the Mercedes and the BMW, and then if you're going to get something with this kind of performance, you're talking way over that price-wise. So, those aren't even like realistic competitors in my opinion with the GLS and the X7, so I would just, not even bother looking at those unless you've got a very flexible budget. And then, the last two things that I do have to mention, the two other wild cards here. First off is, Mazda's trying to make a big push towards the premium side of, being a premium brand. And, obviously it's not a Lexus, but they have done such a good job with those new interiors. They're very luxurious. It's very premium feeling for sure. And with Mazda, they have the new CX-90, which again, isn't quite as big as this, but, has grown a nice bit over the CX-9. And those have a plug-in hybrid version. Now, it only uses a naturally aspirated four-cylinder, not a turbo four like this has, but does have a plug-in hybrid and does a similar amount of horsepower. It's a little bit down. I think it's like 330 horsepower in those, but, still very punchy. I really enjoyed my time with those. That could be another one that comes in. Those come in under $60,000 for one of those. So that could be a real good value competitor if you don't need to have a full-blown luxury brand that gets really close to luxury. And in my opinion, I think it's actually more luxurious than some of the other luxury competitors as well. But, so that's one that's worth considering. There's even also the Turbo S version of that Mazda CX-90 that's about $62,500, also very premium. Also gives you, again, that extra punch. It's a turbo inline 6 engine in that one, and that one's, a really nice, impressive thing. The transmission just isn't great in those. It's the only thing. It was a little more frustrating than this always being ready to go with this hybrid system and always being nice and punchy, regardless of what gear the transmission's in. So I still think I prefer the driving experience in this, a little bit, but the Mazda is really nice being on a rear-wheel drive based platform, having great handling and, a very nice vehicle. And so that is, another one that I would consider personally if you're shopping in a 3-row, premium kind of segment. The last thing I do have to mention though, if you aren't, insisting on a luxury brand, is the Toyota Grand Highlander, the vehicle that this shares a platform and, many of the under components with. And, a Hybrid Max Grand Highlander loaded up with everything is like $60,000 and gives you basically all the same stuff you get here in this. All the nice features, you get the captain's chairs in that with heating and ventilation. You get an extra seat in the third row. You still get like, a big screen. It's a 12-inch screen in that versus 14 in this, but it's just because Toyota still has manual climate controls versus them being baked into the screen here. You still get the camera rearview mirror, pano roof, all the, 360 cameras. Basically everything. The Grand Highlander does match this on feature content for the most part. And, so you're getting essentially the same vehicle, just with, a little bit less refinement. Obviously, this has, the extra sound deadening, the extra weight, the extra luxury. You get, some things there. But the thing is, that's just $60,000. And compared to this, it's $79,000. It's a $19,000 upcharge for the Lexus. Now, yes, you get the adaptive dampers, which you don't get in the Toyota. You get the rear-wheel steer, which you don't get in the Toyota. And obviously, again, all the other extra stuff, the better stereo. And, there's a lot of upgrades. But are there enough upgrades to justify $19,000 of upcharge? I just don't think so. I love the TX, and again, if you are someone who wants the luxury branding, you want, Lexus experience, by all means, if you have the money, go for it. But again, if you're looking for value, unfortunately, I think the regular TX is going to be the way to go if you want to stick with the TX. But I think the Grand Highlanders still just are so good because they give you so much of the same stuff for less money. And so for me, if I were watching my money, I'd just go for a Grand Highlander, to be totally honest. But I still love the TX. I think it's really nicely done. And for those who do want a 3-row giant Lexus, you finally have it, and it's great that we now have this extra performing version as well, and great to give people options. And the one exclusive thing the TX will have that the Grand Highlander does not have, in addition to the rear-wheel steer and the adaptive dampers, is that you're going to have that plug-in hybrid version with the TX 550. I'm hoping to test one of those here later this year, and that's going to be the one thing that Toyota's not going to offer, at least for now, is that plug-in hybrid thing. So that will be really, I think, the most desirable TX in many ways, and is probably, it's only a few $1,000s more than this. So if you're not interested in the, sportier handling and you're okay with the heavier weight of that battery pack in the plug-in hybrid version, I would probably say go for that. I'd go for either the 550 version, get the extra actual efficiency, or go for down to a TX 350 and save a bunch of money and still have very much similar experience, just without the extra punch of, you know, this Hybrid Max powertrain and the slight handling edge. But still, I still really like this vehicle, even though it sounds like I'm recommending everything but this vehicle. I still do really like the TX 500 here still, nonetheless. And if it's what you're looking for, I think it's really well done, and I certainly have enjoyed my week with it, that's for sure. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the TX 500H. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Lexus for providing me here with this TX 500H to review for you guys today. Thank you all very much for watching. Please subscribe and stay tuned for more coverage on the TX here with that 550 video coming later this year. Thanks for watching once again, and take care.